Welcome to Melt University. This series will help you build your brand, inform you on a variety of career paths, and introduce you to top executives in sports and marketing. Now, here's your host, the president and CEO of Melt, one of the largest independent sports and event marketing agencies in the country, Vince Thompson.
Welcome back, students. Virtual Melt University rolls on into the fall, into a tremendous period of the tumble cycle uncertainty. You are back at college right now. Hopefully, you're on the campus right now. Hopefully, you're in the classrooms right now. Hopefully, or you're in your dorm room taking virtual classes and just trying to figure out in this crazy world if we're going to play college football or not. And at the forefront of this dialogue and these discussions is going to be a great entertaining and educational conversation today with Dennis Dodd, who is, if he's the not preeminent, one of the preeminent journalists in sports, and college football with CBS Sports, CBSSports.com. I've been following Dennis for many, many years, and he's kept me well informed. You need to follow him on all social media channels and outlets. Can keep you informed on everything that's going on, but also had a tremendous career just as a journalist. Graduated from Missouri, which is obviously amazing journalism school. My dear friend Craig Silver, business partner, Missouri. Lots of great graduates from Missouri. Football Writers Association of America award-winning president. And another great distinction, has covered and attended all 16 BCS title games that even evolved into the realignment, which started college football playoff, and we'll talk about that well. But he's also covered a lot of many other sports, and like me, is probably very severely underappreciated for both our personal and professional gifts and talents, as well. But Dennis, welcome to Virtual Melt University, and we are looking forward for you to share your wit and wisdom with our students and listeners today.
Well, Vince, it's an honor. Thank you for the kind words. I don't know if Dennis Dodd of 1980 could have gotten into Missouri J School of 2020, but that's another whole show. I'm just glad to be here at this point. It's strange times, and I can't tell you the number of books that could be written out of this, and movies. Frankly, it's got a lot of potential.
I think they're going to be movies, books, and lawsuits, and not necessarily in that order.
Sounds like a good name for a song.
I think that's a hell of a country song, but I think I probably have experienced them all. And I agree with you when I tell my students that I made 21 on the ACT. They look at me like am illiterate, and I may be, but yeah, certainly the standards are much higher. But we always love to start with our guests and go way back. And I know when I got to Auburn, I had two passions. I loved sports and I loved to write, and I wanted to figure out how to combine those two. Wanted to be a sports writer, go back to Mobile and the Gulf Coast and be a reporter at the Mobile Press Register. Fortunately, got on a different career path through David Housel and Auburn University. But when was your passion for sports and writing first ignited?
Growing up, I listened to Harry Carey, and if some of those students out there don't know who he is, Google him, kids. He died in 1997. He was a larger than life figure. Baseball, Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox,
the best ever.
Not many people know that. I think it was 1969. He actually did the play-by-play for Missouri football. And I thought that was the coolest thing. It was last conference championship they won, 69, lost to Penn State in the Orange Bowl. And for me, as how old would I have been then? 12-year-old, it just made it bigger than life. Those were the days when you painted those word pictures on the radio.
Right.
And I said, I want to do this. And when I got to Missouri and got into the J school, there was that moment where you had to choose which path you wanted to follow. They have a radio sequence, they had a print sequence. I can't tell you why I picked print, but I did, and it just went from there. So Harry Carey, believe it or not, was my inspiration, and then made it through and started in Sherman, Texas. First job, $10,000 a year. Went to St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Suburban Editions, Kansas City Star for 8 years. The St. Louis Sun, that's another one you'll have to Google. Lasted 9 months in St. Louis.
Right.
And then, long story short, joined CBS in 1998 when it was CBS SportsLine.com, and its original investors were Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Joe Namath, and there was a fourth big name in there.
Was that in Fort Lauderdale?
It was and is. Yeah, it's still there.
Was Huizinga's involved in that?
I don't know. It may have been. I don't
God,
know.
I remember when SportsLine was started, and I remember when CBS acquired.
Yeah, and in 2001, after the bubble burst, they exercised their option and acquired a majority of the company. So 22 years later, here I am.
So you've just said a lot of things that we love to unpack, and you've hit on a lot of things. But so you did pursue and follow your passion, and like I said, the listeners, if you don't know who Harry Carey is. One of the greatest. Oh my God, just one of the. I think, Dennis, and you've done a lot of things, and I've been exposed to a lot of things. But one of my bucket lists, and I was able to do it, was actually before he died, was to go to Wrigley Field and sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" with an ice cold Bud.
Yeah.
And he would always be leading the choir, and I thought I had just I never got to meet him. I've met some of the great ones, but I just thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And to your point, go back and research some of these old great guys: Keith Jackson, Pat Summerall, Harry Carey. I mean, they really, back in the day, to your point, they had to bring this thing to life, through the lens of a radio, not what we all take for granted now. And study these great ones, and find, even if it's in a current or relevant now. Find these passion players and make them your virtual mentors, even if you can't get in touch with them. Although now there's a lot of ways to get in touch with them. But then you step on another thing. You've had this passion. You've gone to one of the 2 or 3 top vaunted journalism schools in the country, and then you go all the way to Sherman, Texas. And we've had a lot of interviews with a lot of great guests. Greg Sankey of the SEC and others who said, you got to get your foot in the door. You got to push yourself out of that comfort zone, and you got to be willing. And now, Dennis, with the environment, with entry-level people in our profession, it's going to be a nuclear winter because so many people are unemployed in this right now that they're going to be willing to take a lesser job to get back in the game, which is going to compress this entry-level environment. But talk about that willingness to just push yourself out of your comfort zone and dive into that deep end, because I'm sure Sherman, Texas was probably not the place you thought you might start.
Totally out of my comfort zone. I was a Midwest kid who'd grown up in the suburbs of St. Louis, and that's all I knew. And to go to Sherman, Texas, which for people who don't know, it's 10 miles from the Oklahoma-Texas border, about 65 miles from Dallas. And to be called a Yankee for the first time, like I literally said to these people, I didn't fight in the Civil War. I don't know what you're talking about, because I didn't have that Texas twang. But right. As far as you're getting your foot in the door, absolutely. We were a 2-man staff, had to be there, and it was an afternoon paper. So we had to be there at 7 a.m. and we were done at like 2:00. We had the paper was put to bed because it was out in the afternoon. Well, the temptation was, hey, you got the rest of the day, but you'd have to pay for it because you had to get up at 6 to get to the office, plus go out and report and write, because we had to do everything. Right. And I'll never forget it. I was introduced to Texas high school football, which I absolutely love to this day. I love the state of Texas. It got me out. It got me experience that I never would have gotten otherwise. And it was a grind. It was hard work. It was Friday Night Lights, baby. I saw it all. I saw 10,000 people at little Class 3A football games, because it's
which is probably still one of your most favorite things in your bonding career and one of the most inspirational things. And this is what we're telling the kids. And I think you and I can certainly preach about this and relate to this. And our students are really living it in real time right now. But certainly their career path in life is not going to be linear. And we all are living in a different age of the tumble cycle right now. And so be willing, like I said, Greg Sankey told one of the most poignant stories is that he was educated in upstate New York, and his first job was just in Bumfudd, Louisiana, as the head golf coach at a Division III university. But he knew he had to start somewhere. And what I see out of our students now is that they want to be the CEO immediately. They may live in an instant gratification society. They may try a job and I don't like it in 3 months and move out. But it was always tough, but it's going to be a new world order. And you were willing to take that step out, but then unwittingly, the silver linings. You got introduced to Texas high school football. You got introduced to that aura of the Friday Night Lights, which probably informed and guided you right even now into the rest of your career, correct?
Absolutely. I had a sense for it. I covered the Cowboys.
Wow.
For part, we weren't there all the time, but
right, sure.
we were there, and that got a lot of readership. In 1989, after 8 years at the Kansas City Star, I took a job I mentioned at the St. Louis Sun. Big jump in salary. Just a total startup from the bottom. A European magnate wanted to, start what do you call it? I'm trying to remember what they're called. New York Post. I just blanked on that type of newspaper. Not a broadsheet, but anyway, and it was very, very controversial. And out there, here's one of the first headlines. He grabbed hers, so she sued his. That was a front page headline in our newspaper. Well, suffice to say, in a very provincial city, in a very religious city,
yes.
it lasted 9 months. But without that experience, I wouldn't have gotten a job at the National, which was the first and to date only national sports newspaper in the United States,
right?
And then that led eventually to CBS Sports. So it was a stepping stone.
Well, that's what we try to explain.
A tabloid, Vince. A tabloid. That's
tabloid.
I'm getting old. It was a tabloid.
But to your point, your path is going to be your path, and so don't really worry about what it is, particularly at this age and this tumultuous period we're in, and things is moving fast in social media. But so jumping to SportsLine. And I remember this because, people don't remember that this internet thing wasn't as pervasive as it is, quote unquote, today, internet thing today. And startups like SportsLine, that was considered way out there as well, because you had traditional sources where you got your information: television, radio, and newspapers and magazines. And the notion that people would go to a different format or medium to get their information, and then the valuations got so big, and then everything exploded. In the early 2000s, which I recall, very vividly. Not only did we have 911, but we had the gigantic internet bubble burst, and lots of people got messed up. But taking that leap, but then the common thread was your commitment to your craft and commitment to your profession and commitment to being the best in your craft. And so you've been, you 20 plus year career with CBS SportsLine, CBSSports.com. But tell me how you migrated to the college sports and college football space the way that you did, because as I'm sharing with our listeners, they need to follow you on all the social media and Twitter if they really want to know what's going on out there. But why was college football your first love?
Well, actually, hockey's my first love as a fan. I love watching hockey the most. But college football, when I was at the Kansas City Star, I started covering colleges, and it was a big deal because you had 3 schools from the Big Eight within driving distance, 4, actually 5 if you count Nebraska and Oklahoma, Kansas State, Kansas, and Missouri. So you had 5 of the 8 teams. Plus the NCAA was located there. And
Right.
so
People
for
forget that. Right.
so for a while we were the paper of record on all that stuff. Wow. I mean, we were breaking stories, investigating schools, and I was coming along younger at a time when the guys I looked up to had done that, and I just naturally gravitated to it. I loved, like it sounds really simple, the pageantry of it. I think the purity and innocence of the college athlete, that's before they, become adults really, and they're trying to make a name for themselves as athletes as well as students, frankly. And so that's when I fell in love with it, and that's what I stayed with really the whole time. I've done some NFL, I've done some baseball, I've done some hockey, but and I help every year with March Madness. But that's where I got my love of it. A quick story: in 1977, I was sitting on the Rock M at Missouri, and that's literally what it is. It's limestone built in the shape of an M at one end zone, and watched Leo Lewis return a punt, I think against Iowa State, and I just remembered, this is really, really cool, and I want to be a part of it. So that was another turning point.
Well, I think that, and they may laugh at me and you, but the pure pageantry and the purity and the innocence of, forget the money aside, the 18 and 19 and the 20-year-olds and one of your colleagues, Tony Barnhart, and I were having this discussion recently about, it's just that pure passion. And I think you see, that kind of playing out right now where, there's so many people in so many different constituencies that are passionate about trying to get something played this fall, but sort of transitioning a little bit because you do cover college football preeminently. You talk to the leaders in the sport, whether they be commissioners, athletic directors, coaches, student athletes. A couple of things, and one is, as we've had interviews with Auburn AD Alan Green, Texas A&M AD Ross Bjork, Greg McGarity at Georgia, we've uncovered a lot of actually new types of positions and jobs within an athletic department. And by the way, I've been enlightened. Mental health, the big issue of name, image, and likeness among student athletes, the compliance of those rules within that. Obviously now safety and safe fan experience and those types of things. But before we get into the NIL, from the perch you sit and the people you talk to, and I tell our students, hey, the campus is the ultimate professional lab. You're never going to be around an environment where you can go out and learn and do anything with some of the greats in the world. From your perch, where do you see future career opportunities, particularly with the people that you interact with every day and what you do?
I think certainly in compliance, there's going to be a huge ramping up, at least at these bigger schools, with NIL coming on board, because that's going to have to be vetted. I just think that the whole social media thing is going to explode. I mean, I've already done stories on this, that Spencer Rattler, well, start over. There's a firm in Lincoln, Nebraska called Open Doors, and I'm very familiar. Blake Lawrence.
Yeah, we're having some interesting discussions right now.
So for like 10 years, they've done 13,000 professional athletes around the world and monetize their social media. Well, now they're about to jump in feet first into the college space when NIL gets passed, and they're going to be helping these athletes earn money, frankly. And I gave him a list of 50. He said, give me a list of players and I'll tell you what they're worth. And by the way, this shifts literally every day. I gave him 15 players that off the top of my head: Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. This is really interesting. Spencer Rattler, who's taken 7 snaps, who's thrown 7 passes at Oklahoma, redshirt freshman, is number 3 on that list because he's a big Instagram guy, YouTube. Would be worth this year over $700,000 alone in social media. Wow. So the opportunities that's going to provide on campus or off campus. I mean, I think we're really, really close to the day when coaches and ADs are regularly going to have to sit across the table from marketing agents and field questions about what more opportunities can my guy get. And I think there'd have to be people on campus to answer those questions.
And no better than the students or their friends and
Yes.
classmates sophisticated in this. And
Yes.
you know, Dennis, you hit on something. I'll tell you a couple of quick anecdotes I'll let you respond to. I have had two separate conversations, one with a very, very famous college football coach who said, Benny, I am a old ball coach and I know nothing about this. And I am getting asked by my kids and by my recruits. And in fact, I had a conversation with a 17-year-old kid I'll tell you about. And they go, we don't know anything about branding. But these kids are saying, not what is the university going to, I mean, what am I going to do for the university's brand? What is the university going to do for my brand? And I even talked to one kid at senior in high school, great recruit. He's already planning his fashion brand.
Yeah.
So this is going to be.
None of that is surprising, by the way.
I mean, and here's the thing that I say. I know we focused on the Trevor and Justin and Tuas and all those guys, but there is a lot of great opportunity for, I say, the non-revenue and the Olympic and the females to bring in new sponsors, new dollars. I use the Auburn women's equestrian team,
yes.
As an example, like, hey, these girls are working as hard as the Auburn football team, and they deserve to be able to. I mean, and $500 in their pocket is a lot of money. And so from your view, but then obviously on the other side of that, you've got the NCAA and they've got these rules, and obviously it's open for interpretation and people can cheat and do bad things and all that. So there's going to be, opportunity on both sides of this equation, both in the participation of it and the compliance of it. Wouldn't you say?
I just thought of this. Yeah. Think about being a social media manager. There is a walk-on receiver at Nebraska named Elliott Brown, who has the fifth highest potential for being paid. You know why? He's got an Instagram account, and this is a rumor. It's not even fact. It's a rumor that he dated JoJo, who was some sort of singer that I don't understand. It's very popular, but it wasn't. Right. Apparently, it wasn't even fact. But his Instagram and social media presence would have made him the fifth highest paid player at Nebraska in social media. Now, my point of saying that is, if you're his buddy and you cozy up to him, hey, I'll be your social media manager, or cut me off a check. I don't know. Would that get you $5,000 or $10,000 a year? It might. Just label yourself. And so all this is going to blow up.
That's a lot of money, and particularly if you're paying your way through to participate, and maybe you can start a rumor about me and Reese Witherspoon or something, and maybe
we were born way too early, Vince, way too early.
So from your perch, you see this, and so let's segue into. Because it's just very enlightening. Our students really want to know this information, and they're on the edge of their seats, and they love to follow it. Sophisticated, but given what you're seeing today from your perch, and obviously there's going to be short term and uncertainty, but long term, where do you see college sports attendance going? The athletic departments with their if they're going to be budget cuts, students might have an opportunity to walk into that department and volunteer for their time and services for opportunities they may not have. But do you ever see this coming back to where it was?
I think there'll be profound changes. I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, and I've thought about it further. I think there's going to be, I know there's already cuts at the highest level in terms of spending, scheduling, jobs. I think a lot of these universities have these big staffs and budgets because they could. The money flowed downhill from the TV rights, and now that money is going to be in question. The money, it started with the NCAA tournament being canceled, where these schools got 37 cents on the dollar, and if it's impacted next year, that's going to be another huge hole.
Right,
because we're less than 7 months away, by the way, from March Madness, and if you had to predict today, you wouldn't say 100%. 60.
That is I didn't. That kind of gives me chills because March Madness 7 months, and I was just sitting here in March getting ready to produce my 18th March Madness.
Yeah,
and 7 more months.
Right. Wow. So the short term is going to be really austere cuts. But that doesn't mean it'll go away. I've seen many projections where it's going to bounce right back. In other words, they'll get through this, as we all will, and then that money will flow again. And at that point, I think they'll be hiring again because of what I just said for the NIL piece alone, the management of that. So yeah, it's my son just got done with an internship at Oregon State. In the time it was ending the internship, they went from 7 people in sports information to 3. This is a Power 5 school in the Pac-10, Pac-12, servicing I don't know how many sports. 3 people covering the whole thing. So that's just an example. I don't think it's going to get any much better anytime soon.
Which does create opportunities for, because I worked 4 years through sports information, and it was just the most valuable thing in the world because coupled with the sophistication of these kids. But so let's evolve a little bit because you've been in this game for a very, very long time, and we'll talk about the CFP and the things in a minute. But through your years and through your career, I'm probably sure similar to mine, we've had a lot of great relationships and we've had a lot of great mentors. We try to impress this upon our students every day and our listeners. Talk about the importance of establishing, building, maintaining, nurturing relationships, particularly as fast as this world now moves, and how valuable that process has been for the success of your career, because your entire stock or currency is built on your sources, which are relationships. And so you've always had to, you've always had to maintain these at the highest level, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the number one thing, the relationships, whether it be direct or peripheral. There was, and beyond sources, it was, that's what's killing me so much now. I can talk to these people, but I can't get out and see them face to face. And that's how the relation started in the first place. So, there was a point in the last 22 years, and I can't tell you when it was, that it occurred to me, you know what, they're calling me back because, not only do I work for CBS, it's because I know these people and they know me, and they don't call everybody back. I don't want to say I was close to interviewing Donald Trump, but I was in direct communication with Hope Hicks in 2016 for a story idea. I want to know what he thought about college athletics. And, I just want to ask him Trump questions about it. Never came about, but I think the fact that I had CBS in front of my name allowed her to take the call. But it's that type of thing. And it's not one equals another. It has to take time, and it occurs over the years, and you have to do it the right time, and people have to trust you. And there is no black and white X equals Y formula for that. Vince, you know that. I mean, it evolves over time. I go back to the Woody Allen, what movie was that? Maybe it was Annie Hall. I can't remember what Woody Allen movie, but he said 85% of life is just showing up. And if you're there all the time, the coaches notice, the players notice, and pretty much they know you're there.
Well, and you also, we always say the first 2 letters of the word relationship are RE, and reciprocal is RE. Yeah. It's got to be reciprocal. You've got to treat them well all the time. And we say it's sort of like nurturing a plant or a flower or something like that. I mean, it's kind of, people say, well, how do you represent Coca-Cola for 20 years? And I go, I never take the relationship for granted. Right. I prune it, I trim it, I water it, I nurture it, I fertilize it, I give it light. Because particularly now, as fast as things are moving, and particularly with the speed and the flow of information, I mean, you absolutely, and we tell our kids and our students and our listeners that right now, is that, begin those relationships now, begin that nurturing, and not only the relationships, it segues into mentors. And I know as a guy as successful as you've been, you've had great mentors, and I'm sure you have some great mentees, but I want you to talk about your mentors. Talk about the importance of mentors to you, or even if you had them.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. Find a mentor. wherever you are in your life, find someone you can bounce ideas off of. If it's your parents, anybody, a friend, somebody in the business, and as you go through life, those will come to you. I had one, and he's still my one of my best friends, Steve Richardson. He's president of the Football Writers, and he worked in Kansas City when I came here, and he kind of showed me the ropes, And if I stepped out of line, I was 23, crazy nut job, 23 years old, he'd say, okay, just watch it. And I didn't listen to him all the time, but I should have.
Right.
You know who's a mentor is Mike Slive. I mean, just as a person.
Commissioner Slive, one of my favorite live, and he comes up in a lot of these. But talk about educate, because our students will never have that opportunity to interact with them. But I want them to study SEC Commissioner, former Commissioner Mike Slive. Talk about what made Mike Slive so special to everybody.
He commanded a room. He was smart, first of all, obviously. I go back to the story about how he got hired. It was atop the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, and I don't know what the gathering was, but at the time, Wright Waters, who's the retired executive director of the Football Bowl Association, I think was at Alabama, and he was being courted to become the SEC commissioner, whatever year that was, 2000. I don't even remember. But he said, Mike, your accent won't hold you back. It sort of kiddingly, and Mike Slive's Ivy League, raised in, I want to say, New Hampshire. I believe that's right. I think that's New Hampshire.
Yeah, New Hampshire,
or actually Utica, New York. Played high school football in Utica, New York. But he kind of said, Wright Waters said, we may talk funny, but we know what we're doing. And that sort of convinced him, that he could do it. He was, I don't want to say he was an out of the box choice, but he was different. He didn't come from that culture. And my goodness, the SEC wouldn't be what it is today without his vision, without his negotiating skills, without his people skills. I remember not one of the last times I saw him, but one of the last times I saw Chuck Gerber, who's the old executive at ESPN. He was a very powerful TV executive. And Chuck Gerber, Mike Slive, and I think it may have been Sankey were smoking cigars out by the pool at the Hilton in Destin after another SEC spring meetings. And either Mike or somebody said that the world's about to change. And it's all this stuff we're talking about. I didn't get it then, but I get it now. He saw that far into the future. And Mike died 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Is it 3?
Yeah.
3 or 4?
3 years ago this spring. Unbelievable.
And so he had that much vision to where, college athletics was going to be where it's at. So he was great. I literally could write a book about him as well.
Well, the books haven't been written yet. And I mean, there's so many business lessons and life lessons. And I will tell you another thing. I'm sure you've been there too. I was also on the receiving end of a couple of whacks where he would not hesitate to whack the hell out of you if he disagreed with you wrong, but he did it in a respectful manner.
Yes.
And in the tone and I think I was still living in Birmingham when he was chosen the commissioner. And to your point, I mean, it was a little bit out of the box, particularly following the commissioners that had been commissioners, Commissioner Kramer, and was an old coach and referee, and had a vision as well. And then people forget of where the SEC was at that time. We were sort of in the ditch a little bit. A lot of people were misbehaving, and he came in there, and so many life lessons about Commissioner Slive. I never forget when I would go over there and see him. He would spend weeks getting ready for his speech at the SEC.
Oh gosh,
day.
Yeah, those were famous.
And gigantic binders and practice, and he saved the binders, and all those amazing things. But it never was never was an edict coming from Mike. I mean, Mike had a way of making it think it was your idea because he was brilliant. But I do agree. And if our students have not not followed Commissioner Slav, he's an amazing one to study. Maybe you'll write the book with him one day. But fast forwarding a little bit, you're out there, you're visible, you giant Twitter following, you're online, you write amazing articles. People should follow him. But if a young aspiring student tries to track you down, tries to reach out to you, what now gets the sage Dennis Dodd's attention? What tricks of the trade if a young student is reaching out to you to try to get you? Because I mean, again, you get tracked down by hundreds of people, hundreds of sources, but what would get your attention or prompt you to respond to an aspiring student who wanted to seek some advice or something?
I would say read as much as you can, not only what interests you, but frankly what doesn't. Get some sort of working knowledge in business, whether it's a business minor or anything. My son just,
which I did not do.
I did not either. My son just took an online class from Harvard. He's a Harvard man. And I would say seek internships in your chosen field. Those are good jumping off points. Meet as many people as you can in person, and I know that's almost impossible these days. But I get hit up on my DM every day from people seeking this sort of advice. And I don't want to sound like, hey, accept this at your risk, but I tell them the same thing. I'm not the end all source on this. But the fact that person had reached out, I thought showed a certain amount of, of wisdom and aggressiveness in getting into the industry. He was reaching out to somebody, even though it was me. And I'll be glad to give them phone numbers and links and how to reach people. Because I know the people I'll give them contacts to feel the same way. I want to help the young kids, the young people, because I was there once. We were all there.
And if you're showing, to your point, if you're showing that initiative, if they're prepared and not just, hey, Dennis, I'd like to talk to you sometime. Like, hey, Mr. Dodd, enjoy your columns, enjoy your articles. I particularly was impressed with this one. They're already showing you right now what type of relationship, contact, and point making. We try to explain to our students every interaction is an audition now.
Yes.
And particularly at people at your level who are getting hit on kind of left and right. And I think that's valuable. And then to your point is that if they're explaining to you, even if they're serving coffee, like, hey, I'm on the front lines of consumer behavior, they're showing you they're self-starters and they have initiative, and everything is packaged up as a brand and an audition. But as we wrap up this, a couple fun questions. You one of the few people to attend all the 16 title games and thousands of more before that. But do you have a favorite game or play that stands out? Because that's why we love college football so much. It's just the emotional connection. But a veteran sports reporter like you, anything fun stand out?
I think there's two. There's the 06 Rose Bowl, 05 season, Texas USC.
Best ever.
There've been 30 for 30 written about it or done. I did, one of my favorite things is like 10 years later, I did an oral history of the game. One of the proudest things I've done, I think, that I tracked down all these people. The Rose Bowl.
I was such a nerd. I still go back and watch that game.
I do too.
It never gets old.
People make fun of the Rose Bowl because, well, why did the Big Ten and Pac-12, sometimes think that's bigger than the national championship? And there's a lot of people in those leagues that still do. And it didn't hit me until I went to Pasadena, Southern California in 2001. The season that because of the BCS, it was going to be the first time the Big Ten and the Pac-10 at that point didn't play. Theoretically, it was the BCS. If they had made it, but that was Nebraska, Miami. Okay. So I went with the idea, well, what makes this place so special, and why is it giving up its traditional ties for this? And it's hard to explain, but it is different, and And if you've ever been on that turf, that field before game day, and looked out and felt that, it's just different. I remember going to Caltech, the first Rose Bowl. First of all, it's the oldest. First Rose Bowl was played in 1902 on the campus of what is now Caltech, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, all that stuff, very august college. And there's a plaque in a playground next to the track where the game was actually played. That's where the track is now.
I know that.
Yeah, Division three school now. And it said, on this spot in 1902, Stanford, Michigan played. Well, here's what a nerd I am. I dug up a piece of turf, put it in my bag, got it home to Kansas City, and kept it alive for five years. That's what it meant. I mean, it sounds stupid.
No, that's something like I would do that.
But anyway, so that game in 05 and then the 02 Miami, Ohio State game, because that's when for years I got people bringing up the fact that when I predicted the game, Miami's going to win by 50 or score 50, and they couldn't get over that. They're like, who, if you followed football then, how would you not think that? Ohio State and the Big Ten was a slow, clunky conference. Their quarterback, Craig Krenzel, was a molecular biology major. And Miami had elite athletes. I forget the numbers. 40 plus NFL players participated in that game. And anyway, Ohio State gets it to overtime only because Big 12 field judge Terry Porter calls a suspect pass interference in the end zone, allowing Ohio State to tie it late, and then they win it in overtime. And just so I have this vision of Kellen Winslow II sitting below the stands at Sun Devil Stadium by himself, helmet in hand, muttering, "The best team didn't win. The best team didn't win." And you could see the raw emotion on his face. And you know what? Right. What he said was probably true, but they were better. Right. They were better that day.
Right. And that's why just the emotion and passion and pageant, you lay all that out. But as we wrap this fascinating conversation, we always love to ask our guests, like, and I'm talking about non-traditional sources. What are the books or the podcast? And we hear a lot about Coach Wooden, referencing these things, some of these great books. But what are some real go-tos that you would recommend that our students read to write? Really, I mean, not necessarily inform them about the careers, but what's been some of your go-tos that you go to in the past and the present as inspiration?
In terms of everything, books, podcasts, everything.
Podcasts and things that you love to read outside of what you and I do for a living.
I love history. I love historical fiction. Anything by Ken Follett, who broke through, I think, in the 60s or 70s with Tinker Tailor, Catcher Spy or something like that. But he wrote a great triumvirate. What was it called? Pillars of the Earth. And I would just for the pure writing of it in historical fiction, you feel like you lived in the 1300s. Nelson DeMille is a great suspense crime novelist who I'm reading his latest book. He did it with his son. It's called The Deserter. It's fascinating. I started reading him in the 80s.
I want to get that.
He's really, really good. And stuff like that. And any sports biography that's really, really good. David Halberstam. Read anything David Halberstam wrote. October 1964 resonates so well today. It was about how the Cardinals, made up 6.5 games in 2 weeks, met the Yankees at a time when the country was turning in terms of protests, racial inequality, and all this stuff. You had this white Southern catcher, Tim McCarver, catching Bob Gibson at almost the height of his career. A guy, a black athlete from Omaha who played for the Harlem Globetrotters, and how they started really rocky relationship and then became close friends. It's an amazing piece of art.
I love that's the way. I mean, I love it. It's not necessarily words; it's art.
Yeah.
And I think those are great reads, because I think obviously the past can certainly inform the present and the future. But this has been just an amazing time spent with you. We could go on all day, and I know that you're going to be hearing from tons of our students and tons of our listeners as we continue to navigate all this crazy, rocky, tumultuous terrain that is college sports and college football and college athletics and colleges. And what you're saying today is certainly going to resonate with so many of our students. But and I think you our listeners, you see why my friend Dennis Dodd is at the top of the pyramid and the game of college sports. And if you really want to learn, you'll read everything that he puts out and everything that he writes. Hopefully one day I'll write the Mike's Live book, because I certainly would buy it as well. But Dennis Dodd, all world journalist for CBS Sports.com, the only one of the handful of members that attended all the BCS title games, fellow college football nerd, famous Missouri grad, and we just so delightful and so honored and flattered that you would join Virtual Melt University. Dennis, thank you so much.
Vince, the honor is mine. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vince. Hope you enjoyed today's virtual class. We'll be back soon with another edition of Melt University 2020.